Alright, I could just hit you with the same old boring list of the top 10 rookie running backs, giving you the dry rundown of their pros and cons. But where's the fun in that? Instead, let's spice it up. I'm going to tell you who these rookie running backs really remind me of in the NFL. Because why just compare stats when you could predict who's going to be the next big star, right? And let's start with Ashton Jeanty, and really, what is there to say here? This guy is a generational talent. He checks every single box you want in a running back. If you're knocking him or putting other running backs ahead of him, you're just doing it to be different. This guy is a once-in-a-generation type of talent. He's going to be awesome in the NFL no matter what. He's going to be an elite RB1 for years and years to come. So let's just jump right to the player comparison here, because there's not much that needs to be said. He reminds me of, I don't know, if Alvin Kamara and Saquon Barkley had a baby, that's going to be Ashton Jeanty. This guy is going to be an absolute beast. He's going to be great. Don't overthink it. Just move on. At number 2, we have Omarion Hampton coming in at 6 foot, 220 pounds, but he ran a 4.46 40 at the combine, so he's got that, and he tested well. He's an athletic, big running back, which is fantastic for the NFL. He also ranked 4th among all running backs in terms of career yards after contact throughout his collegiate career, and he's a good enough pass catcher. No, he's not an elite pass catcher, but he's good enough. So when I look at this guy and I watch him on tape and I think about NFL stars right now, the guy I mostly compare him to is Jonathan Taylor, a stud running back who's a capable pass catcher and just delivers solid, high-end fantasy value year after year. I think that is going to be Omarion Hampton, assuming he lands in a good spot. So I'm going to compare him to Jonathan Taylor. I think he could be that type of player in the NFL. And then next we have TreVeyon Henderson, 5'8", 208 pounds. Not the biggest guy here, but man, you get this guy in space and he is an absolute monster, a speed demon, just an explosive home run hitting athlete, a great pass catcher, but also he's an above average, very good pass blocker, which is great because it means he's not going to be a liability on third down. So we could see him out there on third down. And he is a guy who could potentially have a 3-down role if he lands in the right spots. I do have some concerns that if he lands in the wrong spot, he may not have a 3-down role. So when I look at him, a guy I think compares very favorable to him is Aaron Jones. Now, not the Aaron Jones on the Vikings last year, although he was still pretty good, but think back to his Packers day when it was him and Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams was kind of like the bruiser, goal line back, but Aaron Jones was the guy hitting the longer runs, hitting the home runs, catching the passes. He was the guy you wanted in fantasy. I think that'll be TreVeyon Henderson. I see him in that Aaron Jones mold in the NFL. And then next we got my boy Cam Skattebo, 5'11", 215 pounds. This guy truly does it all. He can run, with ferocity. He can break tackles. He's a great pass catcher. He's a good route runner, and he's also a great pass blocker. This is a guy who can absolutely be out there all 3 downs. Now, he's not going to light it up, as far as athletic testing. You're not going to watch this guy on film and see home run speed. You're not going to see a guy who just explodes through the hole. You're just going to see a guy who gets it done time and time again. And that's what the NFL is going to see. And guess what? The NFL is going to value that. And I see a very similar player to him in Kyren Williams. Now, he's bigger than Kyren Williams, so I would say his comparison is a bigger Kyren Williams. But again, I see the same things with Kyren Williams. Like, you watch Kyren Williams, there's nothing impressive. Like, you don't see like, wow, look at that speed. Like, wow, look at that, crazy this or that. No, but he just knows how to play the game. He's got great vision. He keeps those legs churning, and he just knows how to get it done. That is Cam Skattebo. So I'm going to say his player comp is a bigger Kyren Williams. And then next, the guy I'm coming around on, Dylan Sampson. He's 5'8", 200 pounds. Now, he didn't run a super fast 40 times, but man, when you watch this guy on tape, you see that speed. He's got game speed, and that's very important. And despite his small size, he was one of the leading running backs in terms of yards after contact. He's not one of these small running backs that's just going to go down, as soon as he gets hit. This guy can run through tackles. He also has great timing and vision to hit the holes and explode through the holes to make huge runs. And he's pretty good in pass protection, which some of the other guys we're going to talk about as we go on here, that is going to be a liability. I don't think it'll be a liability for him. Now, he's not going to be a huge receiving threat necessarily in the NFL, but he's going to have enough of a receiving role. And again, he's got game speed, not necessarily, 40 straight line speed, but he's got game speed. I look at him very similar to a guy that was drafted last year, Bucky Irving. Both guys not very big backs, but both very good at running through tackles, and they both have that real life game speed versus the, straight line 40 speed. and they're both good pass catchers, not elite, but good enough and good in pass protection. So I think he could be this year's Bucky Irving. That is Dylan Sampson. I'm getting higher and higher on him by the week. He's number 5. I think he'll be this year's Bucky Irving. And then number 6, I have Quinshon Judkins out of Ohio State. 6 foot, 221 pounds, but man, he's a great athlete for his size. Kind of like Omarion Hampton. Another guy, a great athlete, a big running back, but an athletic running back. Ran a 4.48 at the combine here. Not to mention, he is an underrated pass catcher. I know his teammate, Travion Henderson, was mostly used as a pass catcher at Ohio State, but you know, when Judkins was asked to catch passes, he was more than capable. Now he's not going to be an elite pass catcher, but he'll catch enough passes here. Now I will say, he's one of those guys where pass protection can be an issue, so he may not be there a lot on third downs, but he's still a guy that can definitely be out there first, second down, goal line back, and get enough third down run. And when I look at him compared to some good NFL running backs of this day, I see a lot of Joe Mixon in his game, a guy who just a good, productive running back, can be used in the receiving game. If he lands in the right spot, definitely has that kind of upside. So I'm going to compare Judkins to Joe Mixon. And then next we have Devin Neal, 5'11", 213 pounds. Not the fastest guy, but he's a very, very elusive running back. So not one of those guys that's going to beat you with his speed, but he just knows how to evade tackles. He's one of the top receiving backs in this class as well, which is always a plus. And despite his size concerns, he was very durable in college, well over 200 touches the last 2 seasons without any injuries or missing any games. Now, another guy definitely does have question marks in pass protection, so it's like, how much will he be out there on third down? But he is definitely a guy who could be productive first down, second down type of back, and could still have a role in the receiving game. And I'm going to compare him to a running back, and that is Kareem Hunt. Now, I know this version of Kareem Hunt that we're seeing these days is nothing special, but if you were there in Kareem Hunt's early days in KC, he was absolutely a great running back. Even in his early days in Cleveland, he was a great running back. I think that could be Devin Neal. He has kind of similar traits to Kareem Hunt in that regards. I think he could be that kind of player. A guy who, not jumping off the page with his flashiness or anything, but just gets it done time and time again. And then the guy I seem to be higher on than most is Trevor Etienne, 5'9", 198 pounds, so definitely a smaller running back here. But despite that, he was one of the best running backs in terms of yards after contact last year and forced missed tackle rate. So another guy that, despite being a smaller running back, he can run through tackles, not just going to go down on first contact. Absolutely one of the best, if not the best, pass catching back in this class. He may be the best or one of the best pass catching backs in this class. That is obviously great. Size definitely can be a concern, but we see, it doesn't seem to be as much of a concern in today's NFL as it used to be. And I'm going to compare him to a guy that also had size concerns, that also played at Georgia, that has now developed into a very productive back, and that is James Cook. These guys, very similar profiles, very similar builds. If he lands in a spot like that, he's the type of runner that he can be dynamic enough that a team can't keep him off the field. So maybe like James Cook, he's not a monster year one, but this is a guy who down the road could develop into that. I think him and James Cook have a lot in common. So my player comp for Trevor Etienne is going to be James Cook. Couple more running backs to talk about. Let's start with Caleb Johnson, 6'1", 224 pounds, one of the biggest running backs in this class. And honestly, I almost want to leave him out of the top 10. I certainly have some concerns here. This is a guy, when you watch him on tape, yes, he had some long runs, but he also had a lot of runs where he got caught from behind. This guy doesn't really have home run speed. I say he kind of has like goal line speed or 5-yard line speed. Like he can still rip off long runs, but he gets caught from behind sometimes, which is definitely going to happen in the NFL. Also, his passing involvement is basically check downs and, dump offs. That's it. There's no route running here. It's basically, oh my gosh, I'm under pressure. Let me just check it down to him. But that being said, he also has some pluses. Like he rarely loses yards. This is a guy that is going to go forward, that's going to be valued by NFL teams. I just worry how valuable it will be for fantasy necessarily. And I'm going to compare him to a guy like David Montgomery. Similar guy, not a guy who's going to rip off tons of long runs, hit a lot of home runs, but he's going to consistently move forward, pick up yards. He's capable enough in the passing game. And if he can land into a situation like David Montgomery is in now, and an offense that affords him double-digit touchdowns, he can certainly be productive in fantasy. But I do worry if he lands in a spot in a bad offense that maybe the touchdowns aren't there, he could also be a bit of a bust. So I'm on the fence with him, but I think David Montgomery is a good comp for Caleb Johnson. And then rounding out my top 10 is going to be Bashal Tutin out of Virginia Tech, 5'9", 206 pounds, but despite his small size, he was third among all running backs in terms of forced missed tackle rate. So again, another smaller, undersized running back who doesn't necessarily go down on first contact, who can run through, arm tackles, things like that. Not only that, he's got elite athleticism, a 4.3 240, had the longest broad jump in the class. I mean, this guy is an athletic freak. And he's a good pass catcher. Now, I will say he's not a great route runner. He's not one of these guys that's going to run all these crazy routes like a Jahmyr Gibbs type or anything like that. But man, you get this guy out in space on a screen, he can absolutely score from anywhere on the field. Reminds me a lot of a guy like Devon Achane. Now, he's bigger than Devon Achane, but they both ran a 4.3 240. And we've seen the kind of damage Devon Achane can do in the receiving game. I mean, last year, Achane was honestly not very good as a runner, great as a receiver. I think that can be Tutin. So if he lands in a spot where there is somebody there and established like early down back, and he can be that change of pace guy, and he can reach that 50, 60, 70 catch mark, he can absolutely be great in fantasy. Yes, there's a lot of risk here, but there's also a lot of upside. All right, so there you go. There's my 10 favorite running backs and who I think they could most be like in the NFL. But if you want to see some overlooked rookies in this class who could be studs in fantasy in year one, you need to check out this video right here.